The actual reason for Queen Elizabeth's demise persists as one of history's most lasting enigmas. In her final days, she forbade any post-mortem examination, leaving a legacy filled with conjecture, rumors, and unresolved questions. Although the precise cause of her death was never officially established, several compelling clues exist that might suggest what ultimately led to the end of the Virgin Queen's life. The quintessential portrait of Queen Elizabeth I is familiar to us all. The Virgin Queen, who governed England from 1558 to her death in 1603. In art, she is depicted as almost otherworldly, a slender form draped in layers of luxurious attire, with a starkly pale complexion framed by high white ruffs. Elizabeth I continues to be one of England's most celebrated monarchs. Her parentage traces back to the notorious King Henry VIII and his intelligent yet ill-fated second spouse, Anne Boleyn, who was executed when Elizabeth was merely 2 years old. Elizabeth ascended to the throne in 1558, following the passing of her half-sister, Queen Mary. With her coronation, the final legitimate heir of Henry VIII claimed the crown. The premature passing of her younger half-brother, Edward VI, in 1553, and of Mary I only 5 years thereafter, paved the way for her sovereignty. This was followed by an extraordinary 45-year reign that elevated England to a major world power. Elizabeth transformed from a mere queen into a true legend. However, the concluding years of her life were filled with grief. As she aged, her physical condition deteriorated. Close confidants passed on. The allure that once enchanted her court started to diminish. Accompanying this was a profound sadness, which today we might identify as depression. The queen who had once been the marvel of Europe was gradually fading into obscurity. Let's start by delving into Queen Elizabeth's profound preoccupation with beauty and her ceaseless quest for perpetual youth. Despite receiving proposals from some of Europe's most influential and desirable noblemen, like Francis, Duke of Anjou and Alençon, brother to King Henry III of France, Elizabeth remained unmarried. Nevertheless, she was resolute in her effort to appear young, energetic, and captivating, regardless of her advancing years. To uphold this persona, Elizabeth relied more and more on cosmetics as time went on. This wasn't merely a hint of blush or a dusting of powder. Elizabeth was renowned for applying thick, spectral layers of makeup to create the pale, perfect complexion so admired by the English upper class of her era. During the 16th century, the standard of beauty called for skin as white as porcelain, smooth, flawless, and untouched by the sun or the passage of time. A fair complexion was a sign of nobility and purity, and Elizabeth embraced this ideal passionately. Yet, her commitment to cosmetics was not solely a matter of style. Having survived a dangerous case of smallpox in 1562, Elizabeth was left with permanent facial scarring. Her famous white face paint was more than just for beauty. It served as a mask to hide the imperfections and preserve her majestic appearance. Ironically, the very cosmetics she depended on might have caused more harm than good. Some of its components were poisonous, and over time, the paint she wore so religiously could have played a part in her failing health. On October 10, 1562, Queen Elizabeth I was afflicted by a dreadful disease: smallpox. In that period, smallpox stood as one of the most lethal illnesses of the 16th century, killing approximately 30% of its victims. There was no remedy, no immunization, and minimal knowledge of how to manage it. Elizabeth was fortunate to pull through, but the illness left its indelible mark. While her life was saved, her face was not. The Queen's once smooth skin was now marred by distinct scars, scattered across her face like constant reminders of her brush with death. For a monarch, one's appearance was not simply about vanity. It was an instrument of power. Royalty was meant to represent perfection, and Elizabeth's scarred face left her open to judgment, rumors, and reproach from every faction of her court. Determined to conceal the scars and uphold the facade of an impeccable, ageless queen, Elizabeth resorted to a widely used cosmetic of her day: Venetian Ceruse. This lethal concoction of white lead and vinegar was applied generously to the face and neck, yielding a porcelain-like veneer that concealed any flaw. But this came at a grim price. Modern science reveals what Elizabeth could not have known. Lead is an extremely toxic metal. Extended exposure can lead to skin decay, hair loss, muscular weakness, anemia, and ultimately, death from lead poisoning. Day after day, as she applied her signature pale mask, Elizabeth might have been slowly intoxicating herself. The very compound that concealed her scars may have also sped up her decline. What is particularly chilling is that lead poisoning symptoms are not always immediately apparent. The harm accumulates quietly, building up over a long period. Symptoms often manifest only when blood lead levels reach a dangerous threshold. So, while Queen Elizabeth might have appeared poised and authoritative, the toxin was stealthily doing its work beneath her skin. She was famously rigorous about her looks, dedicating hours to her daily preparations. But as her skin started to degrade from years of heavy cosmetic use, she just applied more and more. Towards the end of her life, it is said her signature white makeup was almost an inch thick. Compounding the problem, Elizabeth reportedly had her makeup applied only once a week and wore it continuously. This meant the lead-infused ceruse had days to penetrate her skin, being absorbed more deeply with each passing hour. And lead was not the sole poison on her royal face. When she eventually removed her makeup, it is thought she employed a blend of crushed eggshells, alum, and most disturbingly, mercury. We know today that mercury is exceptionally toxic. Its consequences include memory impairment, mood fluctuations, irritability, and depression, symptoms Elizabeth was said to exhibit in her final years. Some historians posit that the mercury not only affected her psyche but also physically ate away at her skin. In her pursuit of everlasting youth, the Queen may have unwittingly condemned herself to a slow, torturous death, layer by layer, week by week. Elizabeth's fixation on beauty extended beyond pale skin. She also desired vibrant, blood-red lips. To get this look, she used a lipstick derived from cinnabar, a highly hazardous mineral containing mercury. In the Tudor and Elizabethan periods, many viewed lipstick as more than just a cosmetic. It was considered magical. Some even believed it could fend off death itself. Consequently, whenever Elizabeth felt sick or simply wanted to project a stronger image, she would apply more. By her death, her lips were reportedly covered in an astounding half-inch layer of the crimson color. But these beauty practices were anything but safe. Over time, these applications led to premature wrinkling, accelerated aging, and a severe deterioration of her overall health. Yet, it wasn't only her body that was failing. Her spirit was as well. In her final years, Elizabeth was overcome with sadness. The deaths of her closest allies, including her devoted lady-in-waiting, Catherine Howard, and her once-cherished favorite, Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, affected her profoundly. Following Essex's execution, which she had personally sanctioned, the burden of guilt became immense. By March, her health had collapsed. She sank into a deep, persistent melancholy, sitting silently for hours on end, unmoving on her cushions. Observers noted she frequently cried and voiced great remorse over the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. According to Sir Robert Carey, Elizabeth claimed she never truly authorized the execution, shedding many tears in her last days. She refused to lie down. Certain that reclining would bring death, she stayed upright, sometimes for up to 15 hours, as her attendants frantically placed pillows around her to prevent a fall. But her stamina eventually failed her. The Queen collapsed, and the long sovereignty of England's Virgin Queen reached its conclusion. On March 24, 1603, Queen Elizabeth I drew her last breath. The definitive cause of her death is still debated. Some historians suggest pneumonia, while others propose cancer, but there is little question that decades of using toxic cosmetics filled with lead, mercury, and other dangerous elements were a major factor in her deteriorating health. In her last days, peculiar and disturbing accounts came to light. Her lady-in-waiting, Elizabeth Southwell, alleged that the Queen was plagued by visions, haunted by the sight of her own weakened body. She reported that a playing card impaled with a nail was found on the Queen's chair, a grim and enigmatic omen. After Elizabeth's passing, Southwell made an even more terrifying assertion. that the Queen's body, enclosed in a lead casket, swelled with putrid gases to the point of rupture. However, Southwell's testimony is often viewed with skepticism. After the Queen's death, she converted to Catholicism, a faith Elizabeth had oppressed, which casts doubt on the intentions behind her narrative. And there was one last somber detail. Just days before she died, Elizabeth's physicians insisted she undergo an agonizing procedure. For 44 years, she had never taken off her coronation ring, a potent symbol of her symbolic marriage to England. But with time, the ring had grown into her finger, slicing into the surrounding flesh. The doctors declared it must be surgically cut off, but before the procedure could be performed, Elizabeth passed away. Today, with the benefit of modern science, we recognize the hazards of the same substances she once relied on to maintain her beauty. But in Elizabeth's era, such knowledge was scarce, and the cost of her appearance may have been her very life. Nevertheless, Queen Elizabeth I left behind more than just a heritage of suffering and poison. She bestowed upon England a period of considerable stability, influence, and cultural growth. Her 45-year reign is considered one of the most remarkable in history. May she rest in peace.